Welcome to the Inside Elections podcast, where we analyze elections in a nonpartisan, data-driven, and accessible way. In this episode, we'll preview the annual Congressional baseball game for charity between Republicans and Democrats, and talk about the key Senate race that could impact the fight for the majority in future baseball games. And we'll do it with our friend Nathaniel Rakich. Buckle up. I'm Nathan Gonzales, editor and publisher of Inside Elections, the go-to place for nonpartisan analysis for more than 40 years. And last weekend, I went to a show in Millersville, Pennsylvania, south of Lancaster, in the 11th District, represented by Republican Lloyd Smucker.
And I'm Jacob Rubashkin, deputy editor of Inside Elections. And I spent part of this weekend at the Pentagon City Mall in Virginia's lovely 8th Congressional District, represented by Democrat Don Beyer.
One of my favorite memories about the Pentagon City Mall is that we've lived here for many years. My kids have lived here for their whole lives, and they wanted to go on one of those double-decker buses. And so we went around lots of historic sites, and then we went across the river to the Pentagon City Mall, and they're like, and here's the historic Pentagon City Mall. I'm like, I don't think that's, I think that the Pentagon City Mall paid this bus to stop here. But anyway, it was a funny moment.
That is pretty funny. The first time I went to the Pentagon City Mall, Mark Warner was there. And I just kind of assumed that maybe he just hung out there all the time, but he hasn't been there ever since. So maybe I just caught him on a good day. But Nathan, you have a fun story as well. After time and time again entreating our listeners to seek you out, find you at the various concerts you attend, it sounds like in Millersville you finally struck pay dirt. What happened there?
Yeah, it was crazy. So the band was A Pale Moonlight, which is the band that Conrad, one of our associate producers, and his wife have. It was their first show, was at this place called Phantom Power. And I get there a little bit early, and I'm talking to Conrad, and then Peter comes up, and he is a podcast listener who drove up from Falls Church, Virginia, up to Pennsylvania that Friday night, and he was ready to both listen and collect on my offer for a comp subscription. So this last issue was Peter's first. So thank you to Peter for supporting the cause on multiple levels. But he almost took me off guard because I didn't expect somebody to actually like, oh, wait, this is actually, he's a legitimate political junkie podcast listener. He's from California. He has some experience in politics, and it was great to talk with him.
And he came to the concert because he heard you talk about it on the podcast?
Yeah. I mean, it was not in his neighborhood, right? I think that is why he came. So he wasn't well-deserved comp issues of the newsletter.
Yeah, I think, Nathan, you should get a kickback. You should get a promo fee for that.
Well,
you're driving sales.
I mean, we're getting rich on this right now. So if anyone wants to sponsor this podcast, we're open. So no, it's fun, and we appreciate it. And actually, I'll throw it open. I've been trying to go to more concerts. If you see me at a concert, say hi, and we'll work something out because this is too, politics can be very serious. We got to have some fun with this.
Brought to you by Live Nation, the Inside Elections podcast.
Not sponsored, not yet, I guess.
Not yet.
Before we get into it, let's run through some headlines. Jacob, what should we not miss?
Former Pennsylvania Representative Matt Cartwright confirmed last week that he will not seek a rematch against Republican Rob Bresnahan in the 8th Congressional District after narrowly losing to him in 2024. This deprives Democrats of probably their best possible candidate in the Republican trending Northeast Pennsylvania seat.
Democratic State Senator John Kavanaugh announced his challenge to Republican Congressman Don Bacon in the Omaha-based 2nd District of Nebraska. I believe Kavanaugh's father served in Congress in the 70s, but more importantly to this race, Bacon hasn't officially announced whether he'll run again. Now, we've been told that there's a family trip every other summer when he officially makes up his mind. So an announcement still could be a couple of months away. If he decides not to run, this would be an even better pickup opportunity for Democrats. The seat is also home to the upcoming College World Series featuring the insurgent Oregon State Beavers.
In Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin has officially scheduled the special election to replace the late Congressman Jerry Connolly. This is going to happen on September 9th. Now, the parties will choose their nominees for the special election in what are called firehouse primaries, which are party-run operations rather than a state-run primary. Those will take place on June 28th. The Democratic contest is, of course, the most important one in this very Democratic district, and a half dozen or more contenders have already thrown their hats in the ring.
And one of the top contenders is a former Connolly staffer who has collected a number of endorsements. But when you get a lot of people running, then the dynamic can be interesting. Tuesday is the big Democratic primary for governor of New Jersey. A crowded field that includes Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill and Congressman Josh Gottheimer. Jacob, you talked to former Congressman Tom Malinowski ahead of our last issue of Inside Elections. He explicitly ruled out running for the 7th District against Republican Tom Kean Jr., but seemed to leave the door open for running for another district if Sherrill wins the nomination and wins the general election in November.
Yeah, so I asked Malinowski if he had plans to run for Congress next year. I left it open, and he told me that he has no plans to run for the 7th District, which is, of course, his old district. He did not address any other districts, and there's rumors that he might be looking at running in Sherrill's seat if she wins the general election this November, but he's currently the chairman of the Hunterdon County Democratic Party, and Hunterdon County is entirely within the 7th District.
And our most recent issue of Inside Elections was a House overview where we did updated analysis of more than 100 congressional districts. How many names of candidates, either incumbents, candidates, or potential candidates, are mentioned, Jacob?
Oh gosh, I like 397, something like that.
Yeah. So
A lot.
Jacob did an incredible amount of work for this, and there is nowhere else, no one else who covers tries to get the broad scope of these House districts on a regular basis. And so this issue is just chock full of tidbits about House races. There's no off year. These races are people are running. These races are happening now, and so I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. I want to welcome back our friend Nathaniel Rakich, not a guest, Nathaniel, to this. He is formerly of 538, rest in peace, now back as a contributing analyst to Inside Elections. Nathaniel, welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, back to my roots for a couple of years before I joined 538 back in the ancient times of the 2010s. I was a contributing analyst right here at Inside Elections, and you guys have always been fantastic to work with. And I'm so glad that we're working together again.
Well, people know from episode 32 that you grew up in Massachusetts' 5th District. So we have to ask you a different question. What is your favorite congressional district to vacation in?
That's a great question, and I'm not just saying it because I suggested it.
Taking people behind the scenes.
I want to hear your guys' answers.
Well, it would be weird if you suggested it and it wasn't a great question.
Exactly.
You'd be setting us up.
I think my favorite district to vacation in is Maine's 2nd District. Big fan of, like rural Maine. Both the coastal regions and the mountain regions are, of course, represented in this district, represented by Jared Golden, a swing district. But when I go up there, I don't like to think about politics. I just like to, look at the rocky beaches and eat lobster and maybe go for a hike in the mountains. Acadia National Park is fantastic. Mount Katahdin is great. So yeah, I try to get up there once every summer. So I'm looking forward to maybe doing it again this year.
Nice. Jacob,
what's
on
your
the spot,
guys'?
do you have a favorite to vacation in?
I mean, I go to Delaware's at-large congressional district at least once a year, and enjoy beautiful Bethany Beach, Delaware. So I feel like that has to take the top spot. But I mean, gosh, like New Mexico's second congressional district, New Mexico's first
That's a good one.
congressional district, Arizona, uh, you know, any of them really, like.
Yeah.
You're putting me on the spot here a little bit. Wyoming's at-large congressional district. I'm a big national parks fan. If you couldn't tell, but I think certainly those kinds of big, expansive Southwest and Great Plains districts are have so much to offer.
Yeah, we don't often return to the same because we're going to national parks or something. But I will say Oregon's 6th district, because that's where my parents still live. And so the kids like to go to Grandpa and Grandma's house, play with my old G.I. Joe, or they found my Sega Genesis and it still worked. And so just to see the kids have a good time. And I have a fairly strong nostalgia piece in me. So going back home and maybe catching a Dallas Dragons football game, those are all fun things. All right. So the annual congressional baseball game is this week. And Nathaniel, you've written a great preview for us for the game. It's up on InsideElections.com. For the people who haven't read it yet, who is going to win this game?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that you can't predict baseball, of course, but to the extent that we can, I think it is Republicans' game to lose. They have won the last 4 congressional baseball games ever since the retirement from Congress of Cedric Richmond, who was the Democratic ace on the mound and also best batsman. And he led the Democrats to an outstanding run of 10 wins and 1 loss during that era, the previous decade. But now Republicans are the ones with a really good two-way player in Greg Stubbe of Florida. He starts the game for them and typically pitches pretty deep. That's kind of the key in this game, is just to get innings out of your pitcher and not have them give up 30 runs like happened to the Democrats pitching last year. But Stubbe is a pretty good pitcher, and he also hit the only outside the park home run in the congressional baseball game, at least while I have been keeping records. So basically this century, I think, back in the, there was actually, I think that John Shimkus was the last one, at least on record, who hit an outside the park home run, but that was back when it was in a minor league park. So, still impressive, but
and for people who don't know, it takes place at Nationals Park now.
Yes.
It was at Bowie, where the Bowie Bay Sox, now Chesapeake Bay Sox, play previously, and then RFK. But yeah, so it was a legit home run for Stubbe.
Yes, for sure. And it is, that's a great point, Nathan. The congressional baseball game is a very big deal. It is played in a major league park. It is not a softball game. It's not underhand tossing. It is, they suit up and play overhand with a hard ball, and it really fills Nationals Park, really ever since the 2017 shooting at a Republican practice at the or before the congressional baseball game. That really obviously made national headlines. Congressman Steve Scalise was seriously injured, and it was touch and go there for a while. Obviously he recovered, and that became kind of a really inspirational moment for the game, but that put a big national spotlight on the game. And since then, it has become really one of the big events of Capitol Hill over the summer. Last year's game, I think, had 24,000 spectators. The whole bowl of Nationals Park was full. And the really great thing is that it's actually a fundraiser for charity. They're not just kind of doing this as a vanity project. They raised over $2 million for charity last year between the ticket sales and sponsorships. So it's a really nice thing. If you are in Washington, D.C., it is on Wednesday night, June 11th this year at Nationals Park. If you're not in DC, it is also televised on C-SPAN and on FS1, so I recommend checking it out.
Nathaniel, you mentioned Greg Stubbe. He suffered a really terrible injury when he fell from a ladder in January of 2023. Has has that affected his performance at all, or has he maintained that kind of pre-injury performance in the last two games that he's played?
I mean, yeah, that was really remarkable. He did come back and pitch that year, like roughly 6 months after suffering that injury, which was really quite crazy. I mean, the last 2 games, he's given up a handful of runs. I don't think you can necessarily say it's because of that. Obviously, these players are also a little bit more advanced in age than Major League Baseball players, and they are not getting younger, shall we say. So, I think that eventually Father Time comes for everyone and can sap the life of many a fastball. But I mean, obviously in the win-loss record, it hasn't made a difference, as long as, Democrats have, 2 problems, right? They have to get hits off of Greg Stubbe, and they also have to prevent runs. And their real issue has been on the run prevention side of things. They really have not had any answer at pitcher since Cedric Richmond left.
I saw Cedric Richmond on the concourse at the Democratic National Convention and just sort of approached him and asked him about if he missed the baseball game, and he said no. I think his arm is totally shot. I mean, yeah. And I was sort of surprised, but he did not miss it. But pitching is a big deal. Back in the day, Congressman Steve Largent of Oklahoma, who was not a former baseball player, but was a former Hall of Fame wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, just being that level of athlete was enough to lead Republicans to a whole string of victories as he just mowed down Democrats by pitching, mowed them down at the plate. So pitching is key, and Democrats are need an answer.
Yeah, that was back in the 90s. And there really is this pattern in congressional baseball game history where, unlike normal baseball, where there's pretty good parity kind of around the diamond, it becomes more like football, where it really all matters, like who your quarterback is and like who your starting pitcher is. And so whichever team tends to have the really good pitcher tends to win, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row.
Nathaniel, you've been attending practices for both teams. What is that like? Are they running drills? Are they running suicides? Like what is going on at a congressional baseball game? Do they take well to direction? Like how do these players actually train? What goes into the process here?
Yeah, well, so Republicans are really notorious for their training regimen. They start months in advance. They get up at 6 a.m. and do it. I am happy to report that I did not get up for one of their 6 a.m. practices. I went to one of their scrimmages in the evening. They had a game against a it's not softball, it's baseball, but it was basically like a team of some Capitol Police, some other types of first responders like DC police, firefighters and stuff, that they apparently barnstorm around the Northeast, and they play a team of first responders from Philadelphia and New York and stuff like that. And they played a scrimmage against the Republicans, and the Republicans actually beat them 5-4, which was interesting. So that gives you a sense that Republicans are not slouches. And reportedly, that same team beat the Democrats a couple weeks earlier in a scrimmage 6-3. So to the extent that that is predictive in any way, obviously, again, people who know baseball know that anything can happen in any single baseball game. But it was interesting. They played a game that was clearly designed to be a practice, right? The Republican coach, Roger Williams, had certain infield and outfield alignments that he, wanted to get through and, change them out. And sometimes you'll see this in the actual game as well. Sometimes, especially if the score is lopsided, they'll try to get their bench players in there. But for the most part, they are playing to win in the actual game. But in the scrimmage, they made sure that everybody got at least one at bat. They got all their pinch runners in. They were a pretty disciplined bunch. Stubbe started that game. He looked quite good, got a lot of swings and misses. They had some hard hit balls, or the Republicans did. On the Democratic side, I attended one of their regular practices, and that was only at 7 a.m., I'm happy to say. So it was a little more humane. But, maybe they want to start practicing at 6 a.m. if they want to win. But that was a little more standard. Just telling the truth here. But they did like kind of like laps around the outfield. They started by playing catch, and then they did the like fielding training where somebody would stand and hit the ball from home plate and be like, all right, I'm gonna hit a fly ball to the left fielder right now. I'm gonna do a ground ball to second and practice your double plays. I think that is a big part of it. They didn't do a hitting practice, but I think that the defense is really important, right? Because in a game that is not played by professional baseball players, right? Often, you just have to execute the fundamentals well, which is like once you get that ground ball to shortstop, you have to be able to throw them out because you're not going to make those easy outs. Then when people get legitimate hits, they're really going to pile up. And this is what happened basically to Democrats in last year's game when Republicans beat them 31-11. And the Republicans had a couple of really big innings where the Democrats just couldn't get outs, easy outs.
So you mentioned kind of Democrat struggles with Cedric Richmond no longer on the mound. I'm curious if there's anyone else kind of looking at turnover, right? Are there other players who were very good for Democrats who have left in the 2024 elections, or are there prospects who won their first term in 2024 or playing in their first game that might offer the Democrats some hope?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there were any super notable retirements or departures in 2024 in terms of kind of like.
Well, was Colin Allred, speaking of former pro athletes, was he any good at the baseball game?
That's a good one. Yeah, Colin Allred was pretty good. He only played for a couple of years. He didn't play in the 2024 game because, of course, he was running for Senate, which I guess was a higher priority for him. We all make those
If he
choices.
knew what the margin was going to be, he might have played in the game.
Well, no, maybe he would have stayed the heck away.
Like MTV Rock and Jock, you get the 20 run ball, or like if you hit the
no,
ball out,
I mean the margin. I mean the margin in the Senate race, guys. Come on.
Oh.
There you go.
Fair enough.
Well played.
But yeah, he was pretty good. Not the best. He had an 808 OPS on base percentage plus slugging percentage, which is good by like major league standards, but in the kind of high offense environment of the congressional baseball game, it's a little bit below average. But no, the big retirements, I think, like, for instance, Brad Wenstrup, he was kind of a fixture on the Republican team. He wasn't, to put it kindly, he wasn't a huge part of their offense, but he did get a nice send off. They kind of pulled him from the field when there was, I think, like one batter remaining last year to give him the chance to get applauded off the field. He played in 11 years, so minus the pandemic year. I would say in terms of up and coming prospects, Democrats, they spoke highly of a couple of players like Johnny O of Maryland, Derek Tran and Dave Min of California. But based on kind of the arrangements they were putting out there at the practice, it seemed like most of their players are returning. They did have a couple of good players last year who they're not new here in 2025, but they made their debuts last year. And so that would be Alex Padilla, the senator from California, who didn't play for his first couple of years, but they finally, I guess, convinced him to play. He used to pitch. He was apparently quite good as a pitcher in high school. He also played for MIT in college. Which, playing on the MIT baseball team is probably like, I don't know, being the head chef at a prison or something like that. But
that's just your Harvard bias speaking.
Exactly right. But
cross river rivalry.
Well, my mother actually went to MIT, so I have fond associations with MIT as well. But he pitched in last year's game and also hit and was pretty capable at both. He went 3 for 3 at the plate and only, I think, gave up 2 runs in 2 innings on the mound, which again in this game is pretty good. There was also Morgan McGarvey, who unfortunately broke his foot on the second play of the game last year. And so he didn't get to really show what he had to offer. But apparently they were very excited about him last year. And he says that he's starting at catcher this year, which obviously is one of the more demanding positions on the field. So I would say that those are some of the newbies to look out for.
And are you spending, like, how many hours is Deluzio putting in pitching practice, because I mean he's the problem, right? I mean, no disrespect to the congressman from Pittsburgh, but what, his ERA is like 75,000, like
approximately, yeah.
Is he going to be any better? How are they dealing with the Deluzio dilemma here ahead of this Wednesday?
Yeah, so he wasn't at the practice that I attended, but I asked about their kind of pitching situation, and it does sound like they are going to start Deluzio, which is not the move that I would make personally. So for some context, Deluzio he's one of the younger members of Congress, was just elected, 2 years ago. And so he's got 2 games under his belt. The first year he did start for the Democrats, didn't do very well. The second year they started Pete Aguilar and then only went to Deluzio in kind of mop-up duty. And then he proceeded to give up, several more runs as well. So one of those big Republican innings came off him last year. But yeah, his issue is walks, basically. He has a walk rate of 35%. So basically 1 out of every 3 batters, he just lets get on base automatically. So for context, like an average score in Major League Baseball is like 10%, right? So that is not good. He really does need to improve his command of the strike zone if he wants to do better. I do not know if he has done this. I will say, in fairness to Democrats, they don't have a lot of other options, right? Like Alex Padilla, like I mentioned, he seemed like the best of the bunch last year, but who knows? He's also older and probably doesn't have the stamina to pitch 5 innings the way that Stubbe does. You also have out of the bullpen Aguilar, as I mentioned, who is no great shakes, but at least doesn't walk 35% of batters. Speaking of newcomers, they also said that John Mannion of New York has been working out as a pitcher, so they do have a 4th pitching option if they want it. But again, I think the issue is just length, right? Like they don't have anybody who can go the 5 innings that Republicans have. And so maybe if they give, 2 innings each of these guys, and I should say that the Congressional baseball game is 7 innings, not 9 innings like a normal baseball game is. So they at least can, it's a little bit easier to get through the game. But, maybe if they can do 2 innings out of each player and each one kind of minimizes the damage and doesn't get too tired, they think that they can do it. But again, Deluzio, even in a couple of innings worth of work the last 2 years, has basically walked the whole building. So that's going to be something to watch.
Well, that is a great segue to our next segment. Democrats could obviously use an infusion of talent for the game, and Republican Senator Joni Ernst may have helped their cause. Let's listen to how the senator answered a question about potential Medicaid cuts at a recent town hall.
When you are arguing about illegals that are receiving Medicaid benefits, 1.4 million, 1.4, they are not eligible, so they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die. So for heaven's sakes, folks. Okay, no, but what you don't want to do is listen to me when I say that we are going to focus on those that are most vulnerable. Those that meet the eligibility requirements for Medicaid, we will protect.
Those comments made national news, most of it negative. So, of course, the senator doubled down with a video on social media of her responding from a graveyard.
Hello, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I was in the process of answering a question that had been asked by an audience member when a woman who was extremely distraught screamed out from the back corner of the auditorium, "People are going to die." And I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well. But for those that would like to see eternal and everlasting life, I encourage you to embrace my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
So all of those comments pulled a Democratic challenger off the bench, or maybe out of the bullpen, to keep with the theme. State Representative and former congressional candidate J.D. Scholten jumped into the race to challenge Joni Ernst. So Nathaniel, why is J.D. Scholten significant to this conversation that we're having right now?
Well, he is significant because he is a professional baseball player. And if Democrats are looking for a pitcher, if he somehow wins that Senate race, they will have found him. He is currently only 45 years old, which basically makes him a spring chicken for the congressional baseball game. So he would have that stamina, I think. He has also played professionally for the Dutch Baseball League in 2023. He pitched professionally for them. He had a 4.50 ERA. And then he also played last year for the Sioux City Explorers in an independent minor league here in the States. And he was a little bit worse there. He had a 5.40 ERA, but again, I think that against congressional competition, he would probably do very well. He has reportedly been clocked pitching in the 80s, which would be a speed that we have not seen. I think Cedric Richmond basically threw 80 miles per hour, so this would be even faster than Cedric Richmond. So yeah, Republicans should be quite afraid of him in the congressional baseball game. Luckily for them, he of course faces a very uphill battle against Joni Ernst, even despite these comments.
And so, Jacob, how does JD fit in to the conversation about the fight for the majority for the Senate in 2026?
Look, if Democrats want to reclaim the Senate majority, they need a net gain of 4 seats, which means they have to put some states on the board that they're not currently looking so competitive in, because their best opportunities in Maine and North Carolina are 1, not givens, and 2, less than 4, right? So, they need to win Maine and North Carolina, hold all their incumbents, and then also flip 2 other seats. And we're talking about a list of states that Texas, Florida, Ohio, places where Democrats have really struggled over the last decade or so. And Iowa is on that list as well. And I happen to think actually that Iowa has just as much of a claim to potential competitiveness as a Florida or Texas or Alaska or Montana or one of these other states that Democrats have tried relatively recently to flip. And so if Scholten, or there's another candidate in the race already, Nathan Sage, who I believe is a Marine veteran, mechanic, running in a more progressive lane, there's the potential for State Senator Zach Walz, State Representative Josh Turek, a couple other people are poking around the race as well. Whoever the Democratic nominee is for Senate in Iowa, I think they're going to get a fair amount of attention next cycle, just because the party needs somewhere to focus its resources if they want to have a chance of taking on the majority. And it's a heck of a lot easier and less expensive to advertise in, Des Moines and Cedar Rapids and Ottumwa than it is in San Antonio and Dallas and Houston and Harlingen and the 30 other media markets that you have to play in if you want to seriously compete in Texas.
And from a baseball standpoint, and Nathaniel, you could talk about the fight for the Senate if you'd like as well. But from a baseball standpoint, you mentioned how fast JD potentially throws, but also he is a pitcher, right? I'm sure he has some sort of curveball or slider. I mean, we're supposed to actually meet with him later. We could get his full arsenal about but I just have a tough time seeing some of these members of Congress facing a breaking pitch that's even going 75 miles an hour. People are just going to be bailing out of the batter's box when they see anything like that.
Yeah, I'm excited to ask him to get a full scouting report. Having not seen him in person.
Is there game tape?
Reticent. There probably is. I have not looked for it, but I would imagine we could unearth it. Maybe there's been a Republican tracker at those games scouting.
But I guess the bottom line on the states is that the challenge for Democrats is they need to win all of the states that we're talking about and holding their own. We didn't talk about that. Holding Georgia, holding Michigan. Those are not going to be easy. Holding New Hampshire. Even New Hampshire is not a given. Minnesota, Republicans need to find a credible candidate, but Minnesota is not has the potential to be something in certain circumstances. So the fight, or the path for Democrats, continues to be very challenging in the Senate.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Iowa was carried by Trump by 13 points, which is, it puts it basically like right in that cluster of these states that are like basically like just probably a little too far out of reach for Democrats, like Ohio and Florida and Texas and Alaska being another one. Alaska was actually slightly closer in the 2024 presidential election than Iowa. And obviously, Alaska, I think, is a state where candidates matter particularly much. And, if Mary Peltola, for instance, were to run for Senate, that would be a huge get for Democrats, and I think would definitely put that one on the board. But I agree with Jacob. I think Iowa is, if I were a Democratic strategist trying to look at this map and being like, all right, if we have to win 4 seats and 2 of these seats have to be very difficult, I would like Iowa to be one of those 2 seats. I think that because of the perhaps favorable candidate matchup. Do you guys happen to have either Ernst's or Scholten's vote above replacement scores handy? But my prior is that Scholten, who of course ran for Congress previously, was a stronger than usual candidate. But I don't know. Do you guys have those scores available? We don't have to go through that if we need to.
I don't have them on hand, but maybe Jacob, are you in the system? Are you in the back end?
I'm hacking into the mainframe as we speak.
Which will give, while you do that, this will be a good time to say that we are in the process of rebuilding InsideElections.com to a 21st century website, and it's all of this information is going to be much more readily available. So I'm excited. We're still months out from a public product, but it's coming. It's coming. A new, fresh InsideElections.com is on the way. So.
Unfortunately, I don't think that we have 2020 baseline by congressional district.
Okay.
Whoever was running baseline back in those days must have been slacking.
that was after my day, to be clear. But I think that the candidate matchup is relatively favorable for Democrats. I also think that Democrats have done, admittedly it is a small sample size, but Democrats have done very well in state legislative special elections in Iowa so far this year. I keep a spreadsheet of those results, and they have performed 23 points better on average across 3 special elections than kind of like the it's like a similar concept to baseline, but just like the base presidential partisanship of those districts. And I think that a lot of that is because of the demographics that Jacob mentioned. I think there are a lot of highly engaged voters, especially obviously Iowa, first in the nation state for a very long time. There's a very active party like base for both parties, but right now Democrats are the ones that are engaged, and a lot of that isn't necessarily going to hold forward for the midterm elections, right? A lot of those overperformances in special elections that you see are based on differences in turnout. So it's just Democratic activists are really, really jazzed to go out and vote, and Republican activists aren't right now. And in a midterm where millions of dollars will be spent and everybody's going to know it's election day because that's the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, there's going to be a more even turnout distribution. But it's also not a presidential election, and the turnout effects do matter in midterms, and that's why special elections have historically been predictive of midterm election results. I don't think that Democrats are going to do 23 points better than they did in 2024 in Iowa. J.D. Scholten would love that. But I think the fact that Iowa has seen some of the biggest overperformances in special elections of any state does suggest that maybe closing that gap from the 13 points that Trump won by to, actually winning it for a Democrat might be a little bit easier sledding than it would in, a state like Florida or Texas.
And before we wrap and move to our last segment, I wanted to say that when I watched the response video from Senator Ernst, it struck me as a great example of how only Trump can do what Trump does. That I think she was trying to be funny, right? Sarcastic, try to jab the liberals, Democrats, and it just fell flat, I thought. I mean, I'm sure maybe her most hardcore supporters loved it, but it just didn't. I could see that if Trump had tried to say some of the same things, it would have been different. I mean, it would have come off in a different way just because of who he is. And so it's just a reminder to me and in my mind that the transition from to a post-Trump Republican Party, whenever that is down the line, it's going to be awkward and clunky because no one can pull off the kind of showman vibe that he does, and this is just a good example of that. And now it's time for our final segment, Look What I Found. This is where we talk about anything that we found recently. Could be music, sports, movies. It's usually not political. Jacob, what did you find?
I'm breaking the trend here. I am picking something vaguely political. I am currently reading for the first time All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren.
It's on my nightstand right now.
Which is a novelization, a loose novelization of the rise and fall of Louisiana Governor Huey Long in the first half of the 20th century. In the book, he's called Willie Stark. The book is I would describe it as frustratingly good. It really is just like Warren he's on a heater. It's like every 3 pages, he's just got like a metaphor that knocks you on your feet, or like he spends half a page just talking about a tiny little moment in time and expanding on it to explain one of the great, mysteries or facts of life. It's dense. It's engrossing. It's 631 pages. So, every time that I feel like I'm making headway, I kind of look at the spine of the book and feel bad about myself. But it's really good. It's a fascinating novel. I knew a little bit about Huey Long. I don't know kind of how closely it hews to history, but a really fascinating story. And so far, though I'm not, relatively not that far into it, it's pretty good.
Have you ever been to the Louisiana State Capitol, Jacob?
I have not. No, I've seen, the monstrosity that it is in pictures, but
yeah,
I've not actually been to Baton Rouge.
The architecture is interesting. People should look it up. But there is just outside one of the chambers, either the House or the Senate. There you can see the hole in the wall that was made by the bullet when Huey Long was assassinated.
Okay. Spoiler alert. I just told you I'm not done with the book yet.
Maybe the book turns out differently. Fact, it's not about Huey Long. It's about Willie Stark.
It's about Willie Stark, yeah.
And how long has this book been on your nightstand, Nathaniel?
Gosh. I actually think I might have bought it in Baton Rouge when I visited, which would have been like 2 years ago. Okay. So the length is not, that it may have something to do with the length. Why I keep on choosing other books to read.
That's a lot. Well, are you going to continue this trend of finding political things, or where are you going to take us, Nathaniel?
I actually am. I guess I could choose something different, but the one I was going to choose was last week I attended one of the opinion sessions of the Supreme Court.
Wow.
The Supreme Court recently changed to an online ticket lottery system, whereas you used to have to like get up super early and wait in line outside the court if you wanted to be in the courtroom for things. You can now go to supremecourt.gov and lottery for tickets, and I have been lotterying for tickets regularly and finally got selected. And it was an opinion day. It was last Thursday. They handed down a fairly significant like employment discrimination decision out of Ohio. But it was really interesting to see just kind of all the decorum of the Supreme Court. I had only ever been inside the building once, I think in like high school when I went on a tour, but I'd never been inside the actual courtroom. Of course, it was quite grand. We were kind of seated in the back, all the lottery winners, and most of the courtroom was full of prospective members of the bar, because after they deliver their opinions, they like basically swear everybody into the bar if you are lucky enough to be in there. But the justices came in, they did the whole oye, oye, oye thing. And, they were dressed in their robes. And it was very interesting because these are obviously these figures that, we think of as larger than life, even maybe larger than life than politicians, right? Who we see out on the campaign trail all the time. But these guys, it kind of seems like they just like keep them in their chambers and then let them out, a couple times a week. but it was very interesting. I saw there were a lot of opinions. Sotomayor, Kagan, Thomas, Alito, and Jackson all read opinions from the bench, and it was just really interesting to see kind of this side of the American democracy that, as an elections nerd, I have spent comparatively little time thinking about.
Well, I'm very jealous. I haven't done it. I've lived here for a long time, and I've never done that. But
you should lottery.
I will try. Yeah. Now I know it's a little bit easier. I'm going to try it.
Wow.
So I found that I am not one of those people who likes all types of music. Now this is kind of a confirmation that I thought that I was this person, but this weekend I drove my daughter and a friend to Charlottesville to see Chris Stapleton. Now I think he's got to be one of the biggest country artists out there right now, and I felt nothing. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's not that he's a great musician, a great guitarist. The show was fine, but I don't know. I just didn't. Country music is not. It's not my vibe. It might have also had something to do with that I had probably the worst seat in the arena. And Alan can put up that picture for those of you watching on YouTube. But I don't know. People, I apologize for not liking all types of music, including country.
How dare you, Nathan?
You should apologize specifically for not liking Chris Stapleton. I think it's perfectly okay to not be into country, but he's great. Like I'm not a country listener by any stretch of the definition, but I mean, it's Chris Stapleton.
Maybe next time, Jacob, you can
Smooth
get Jacob
as Tennessee
to take your daughter.
Yeah. That was one of the last. That was maybe his last song before. Yeah, I don't know if Jacob wants to spend that much time in the car with me. I don't know if anyone wants to spend that much time in the car with me to Charlottesville. But he played that song right before the encore. People were. Yeah, I understand. He is big. He's big. It's just not my flavor, I guess. So, but I should feel bad. Do I need to give him another chance? I don't know. I was there.
You should. I mean, sure. If you didn't like him live, then you probably won't like him at all. But you're allowed to have your own incorrect taste in music. That's okay.
That's fine. Well, as I'm wearing my Inside Elections death metal
look at that
shirt, I guess that shows that some of the things that I listen to may not be other people's flavor either. So we can all live in harmony with our love for elections. How about that? If I really want to be provocative, I'll say that the Chris Stapleton show had even less diversity than Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention. But it's been good for those of you who this is your last podcast, so you're gonna listen to. But that's just the facts. Those are just the facts of the case, folks.
Oh man! Wow. I think we better wrap up here.
Yeah, and we're done. But Nathaniel, thank you for joining us. People, read the story online, but also follow him. He is at Base Ballot on Twitter /X. So Nathaniel, this might be your last time if you want to ever be on this again. Thank you for joining us.
I'll be on as much as you guys want. Thank you guys so much for having me.
At Inside Elections, we provide nonpartisan analysis of congressional, presidential, and gubernatorial races. With a combination of reporting and data, we break down the key races and bring valuable context to complex elections. Go to InsideElections.com to subscribe to the biweekly newsletter. We have individual subscriptions as well as group packages that are tailored for association and corporate PACs. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and rate us on your favorite platform. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to that channel as well. If you didn't like today's episode, please email Steve Largent. We also want to thank our producers, Alan Tazinski and Melissa Lenner of Pretty Easy Podcasts, and our associate producer, Conrad Tolosa. Please come back and join us again next time.